Commission, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019 at 6 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll have the roll call.
Yes, Interim Commissioner Duran. Let's see. First one, Commissioner Bullen.
Present.
Commissioner Metcalf.
Present.
Commissioner Peterson.
Present.
Chair Verdugo London. Here. Vice Chair Halby. I think he's running late. And Commissioner Duran.
Present.
Commissioner Bacon.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. We'll move on to item number 4, approval of minutes from March 6th of 2019. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I move.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Old business, I don't see any, so we'll move on to new business. Under A, Cool PZ 190404, Resolution 19-01, a conditional use permit application submitted by Charles Wright for a manufactured home in their agricultural AG zoning district located at 2840 East Bond Avenue, Coolidge, Arizona, APN 202-34-005D, as in David. I see our Vice Chair has averted my continuing here, so I'm going to turn this over to him.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry, y'all. Apologize for being late. Got caught on the freeway. Okay.
Vice Chair, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and describe the item that's next.
Okay.
Our interim chair called for us to introduce the item. So this is actually a request from applicant Charles Wright, who'd like to place a manufactured home at the proposed location. And it's through a conditional use permit that the city allows this type in agricultural zoning. The site actually is compliant with the minimum lot size, the setback requirements for the agricultural zoning. The other houses down the street are traditional stick-built homes. So in the findings, we have the site for the proposed use is adequate in size. The site proposed use relates to the streets adequate in width, the type to carry, the type of traffic that's proposed. The proposed use will have no adverse effect on the abutting properties. The proposed use is in conformance with the general plan. So at this point, based on those findings, it is recommended that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit for placement of a manufactured home at 2840 East Bond Avenue on assessor parcel number 202-34-005D. And below are the just general conditions of the use permit, and then there's special conditions that the unit has to comply to. The manufactured home must be in compliance with all the state, county, local requirements. The manufactured home must be a double wide. Any manufactured home placed on the property must be no older than 3 years at the time of installation, and any manufactured home placed on the lot shall be ground set. And Mr. Hanson, am I leaving anything out? I think that's it. Yes, we have. And Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. We'd like to open it up to the public. If anybody would like to speak, please step up to the podium. Give us your name, your address.
My name is Candy Cooley. I live at 2663 East Jolyn Way. As you can see, it's at the bottom of the map. I'm here in opposition to the granting of this permit. All of the house, as I believe that's Mr. Lopez has discussed, are stick-built in this neighborhood. And they are stick-built in the surrounding area as well. The need for a manufactured home to be sited on here really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It will continue to bring down the property values in that neighborhood because that house is semi-permanent. In addition, if the permit is granted, the It's granted in perpetuity, which means forever. That means that a manufactured house can be placed there from now to 50 years from now. I realize that that site is in violation of many of the city's codes, and this was a way to try to amend that. However, if that permit goes and lowers our property value, then what has it accomplished? Mobile homes decrease in value like a car does. The last thing that I'd like to say is the fact that this permit's been put forward shows me that that's a way to actually go around the zoning commission. Wouldn't it be normal for a person who wants to put a house on here to go and have it zoned residential? I would think that would be the way to handle it. I understand that there are many circumstances where this makes sense. If this was an agricultural area out in the middle of nowhere, it would make total sense. I get it. However, this is less than 3 miles from downtown. Actually, it's less than 3 miles from this building. The need for it doesn't exist. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Charles Wright. I wasn't gonna say anything, but 1119 is a mobile home, which is right there. So it's not the only one in the area. I guess that's all I want to say.
Anybody else like to step to the podium?
I'm Joe Wright. I own the land there. It is out in the country. That's why we live there. 3 miles from Coolidge might as well be 50 miles from Phoenix, which is probably what it is. The mobile home will be ground set. And it's going to be a brand new home. It'll be a beautiful, probably be nicer than the 5 homes there, east of it, or west of it. So, and that's the point, is we're trying to improve the land there and the site. I understand the complaint that they're trying to go around city planning and zoning, but there's some motorhomes on there right now. Those will be moved once the house is there, and it'll be a beautiful place. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Right for you.
Yes.
Do you have a number of RVs or motorhomes on the property or trailers now?
Right now.
How many of those are being habitated by people living in them currently?
2.
Just 2?
Yeah.
And there's what, 5 or 6 on the property?
There's 1 motorhome, 2 motorhomes, and 2 trailers.
2
Yeah.
trailers?
Yeah.
Okay. And just two of the units are being lived in?
Right.
And that is something that is not up to current code in Coolidge city limits?
Right. And that's, we were trying to become compliant.
How
by doing
soon
this.
are you intending to have this motorhome or this mobile home installed on the ground?
Within 6 months.
Within 6 months?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We've got to move some stuff and find one and get contractors lined up.
Have you done any research on the cost of that?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. You bet.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment? Please.
I've got a question. Maybe Mr. Lopez or Mr. Hans can answer. So at 1119, is there a mobile home?
It's my son's
There?
mobile home.
Okay. So was
Yes,
that,
there is one.
there was one? Okay. So was that before any code changes and the city took that in? Was that don't know if grandfather is the right term to use, but
That address, Commissioner Duran, has a manufactured home and a park model. They've been there for 40 years or more.
Or 50 years.
Were there prior to being in the city limits. It was annexed in 2007. New code was adopted in 2009. This whole area is zoned agriculture, and manufactured homes as a conditional use in agriculture was amended to the code last year. It's not principally permitted. Agriculture is a residential zone. It allows for single-family parks, and that's about it.
And Commissioner, if I can add also, a lot of I used to be an inspector in the county, so the county allows manufactured homes throughout, so a lot of times when we annex property in, you could see a manufactured home that's part of that, and it's legal non-conforming. So.
If the property at 1119 South Attaway were to remove that mobile home, they would have to apply for a conditional use permit to put one back on the property. It's fine as long as it's there. But if it were to be removed, they would have to go through this same process.
thank you.
The current zoning of that property at 2840 is what?
Ag,
Strictly ag.
Mhm.
But you can put a house on ag?
correct? Single-family residential with minimum lot sizes.
Residential, site-built residential home?
Manufactured home is a single-family residence. It's a different type. You
Why
couldn't
are
do duplexes out here or triplexes.
Why are
One
we doing conditional use permit?
manufactured home is conditionally permitted
Okay,
in ag,
okay. But site-built is allowed.
principally permitted. They would just pull a building permit that adhered to the required setbacks and development standards and charge ahead.
I've
The
talked-
manufactured home requires this additional step before they can get to permitting.
Yeah, I've talked to one resident of that street that is opposed to having a mobile home put close to her property. I don't know whether she feels it's going to be devaluing of the value of the property or not, and I don't know. Even as a real estate agent, I can't tell you whether that house will make it better or worse for the adjusting neighborhood. It just depends.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the public like to speak? We'll close it to the public. Any further discussion? Can I get a motion?
Chairman, I make a motion not to accept a conditional use permit on this property.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
No second.
No
If
second.
there's no second, motion dies for lack of a second, and then you ask for a different motion.
6B.
We ask for a different motion. Motion to approve?
Vice Chairman Halby, I move that we approve the motion, Cool PZ 140404.
Can I get a second to approve?
I second that Cool PZ 190404 is approved.
All in favor of approving Cool PZ 190404?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Approved. Okay, second business item. We have Cool PZ 190406, Resolution 19-02, a conditional use permit submitted by Audrey Copeland on behalf of Cornell Energy for 2 solar farm sites located north of State Route 287, west of Sunshine Boulevard, and east of 11 Mile Corner in Coolidge, Arizona. Parcel number 40121-043A, 40121-0440, compromising 324 acres, more or less. Item 2, located south of State Route 287, north of Selma Highway, between Curry and 11 Mile Corner Road in Coolidge, Arizona. Parcel numbers 401-010860, 401-010870, 401-010880, 401-140040, 401-140060, 401-15001C, and 401-150040, compromising 1,226 acres, more or less. Mr. Lopez.
Vice Chair, Commissioners, just a little history. The portion of the property of the proposed sites is currently within the city limits, and it was annexed in 2015. The rest of the areas are part of two active annexations that are currently underway, the Alligator annexation and the Coronal annexation. The portion of land directly within the city limits is zoned agricultural at this point. The land areas within active annexations filed for are zoned general rural through Pinal County. Those are the ones that aren't annexed yet. And once the land is annexed, these lands would be assigned agricultural. That's generally where we put property that's brought into the city, and that's required by state statutes. The areas surrounding the proposed solar farm are predominantly active agriculture or large lot residential. The Tierra Grande subdivision is also within view of the site, and that's of the second piece. If you notice on the left, on the left to the bottom where the red dot is. The applicant, Coronal Energy, would like to add solar farm as a use for the property as they bid out energy projects. The staff evaluated the proposed use and determined the setbacks and extensive landscaping are required. And zoning-wise, we don't believe it has an adverse effect on the surrounding property. So our findings at this point are the site for proposed use is adequate in size and topography to accommodate the use of a solar farm. And all yards, spaces, walls, fences, parking, landscaping are adequate. The site that will be adequate that we're going to require, the site for the proposed use relates to the streets, highways adequate in width and pavement, type to carry the kind of traffic that would be generated, which isn't much as far as the solar site. The proposed use will have no adverse effect on the abutting property. The proposed use is in conformance with the general plan, and the conditions stated in the approval are necessary to protect the public safety and general welfare. So our recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit for solar farm and agricultural zone, and as in the parcels identified, we have requirements and they're shown on the plan. All driveways and parking spaces are paved. Perimeter fencing around the project shall be chain link powder coated, dark brown or green in color. Landscaping shall be installed according to the city's zoning code, which requires landscaping along the street frontage. And it should be installed as a buffer along the northern boundaries and also to the east, also to buffers the residential along 287. Let's see, the applicant agrees to dedicate City of Coolidge some right-of-way 100 feet along the north side of Selma Highway, subject property for right-of-way purposes. And the applicant agrees to dedicate the City of Coolidge without compensation 100 feet along the east side and 100 feet along the west side of 11 Mile Corner Road of the subject property and right-of-way. Applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 55 feet along the east side of Curry Road, subject property for right-of-way purposes. The applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 55 feet along the east side and 55 feet along the west side of Tweedy Road of the subject property for right-of-way purposes. The applicant agrees to dedicate to City of Coolidge without compensation 75 feet along the north side of State Route 287 of the subject property for right-of-way. The applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 55 feet along the west side of Sunshine Boulevard of the subject property for right-of-way purposes. The applicant also agrees to chip seal at no cost to the city Curry Road from Selma Highway to State Route 287. The applicant agrees chip seal at no cost to the city Tweedy Road from Selma Highway north to the existing pavement. The applicant agrees to combine project parcels to the maximum extent allowed through the Pinal County Assessor's Office land combination process, so they have to combine it. And then there are some general conditions that that are contingent upon the right to use and occupy the permit shall be contingent upon the fulfillment of all general and special conditions imposed, and also any agreed to conditions that are added during the presentation, say between negotiation between the surrounding property owners and Coronal Energy can be added to this conditional use permit. So they're basically made part of the approval. So when they come back for a major site plan, it can be included regardless of who brings it forward. Okay, and then all special conditions shall be consented to in writing by the applicant. Let's see what else. Is there anything else, Tim? Yep, and I think that's at that point. That's all we have. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. I think at this time we'll open it up to the public. If anybody would like to speak, please step forward to the podium.
Vice Chair Halby, if I could start this public hearing. We had a letter submitted by a property owner who was notified by mail who couldn't be here. He had to be out of state. So we are reading this for them in their absence.
Okay.
To whom it may concern, I, Christy Gear Passig, and my husband, Shotgun Passig, property owners residing as a permanent residence at 840 North Sunshine Boulevard, Casa Grande, Arizona, 85194, are hereby submitting this letter in our absence as advised by your office of the public hearing being held Wednesday, May 8th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers at 911 South Arizona Boulevard, as we have prior obligations that cannot be rescheduled during this time. As stated in the notice of public hearing, we reside at the residence stated above that is within 300 feet of Cool PZ 19-04-06 CUP. Conditional use permit submitted by Audrey Copeland on behalf of Coronal Energy for 2 solar farms. We are located by subject site 1. There is a solar site located across the highway to the proposed site that we were told would be properly maintained with weed control, and trees were planted to eventually cover this site so that it would be covered and the bypassers wouldn't notice it was there. The site has massive amounts of weeds growing under the solar panels, and the trees in front are dying, which makes an eyesore for every resident surrounding this area. We are not opposed to your site being built at subject site 1, but would greatly appreciate the following conditions being taken into serious consideration and followed through. Keep the site 350 to 400 feet from our property line. Do not have any storage of batteries, etc. near any home or dwellings. That the solar site is fenced and properly maintained with weed control on a routine basis. We would like to suggest that maybe instead of trees, have oleanders or some type of bushes around the fences. This would also be less maintenance and better coverage to keep our surroundings pleasant. My husband and I have worked very hard to make our home and our property what it is today, and hope you will respect our suggestions and work with us on the conditions. If Ms. Copeland or company would like to speak with us, please do not hesitate to contact my husband at the number listed below or by email. We would like to have follow-up on the decisions that are made so that we are not blindsided by the end result. One question I would like to ask, will there be any benefits for us from this solar plant being so close, i.e. solar energy? Thank you for your taking our matter into consideration. Look forward to hearing from you. Respectfully, Christy and Shotgun Passig. And it is my understanding that Ms. Copeland has made contact with the Passigs and they have discussed some of these. Ms. Copeland is here tonight as a representative. She could probably come up and speak to some of the concerns after the public vets theirs.
Okay.
That's up to you.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question first before she starts? Well, there's currently a solar site out there someplace now. Can you tell me where on the map that is? Is that east of Sunshine Boulevard?
Nope. That's the one along 287.
Right. So, but it is south of 287 and east of Sunshine Boulevard then?
It's on both sides of Sunshine.
East and west.
Oh, it's on both sides of Sunshine, okay.
That is not under our control.
What do you mean by that? It's not within the city limits?
Pinal County jurisdiction and enforcement of site maintenance or lack thereof.
So what she's talking about is something that is outside the control of the city of Coolidge.
That is correct. City's landscape requirements are also enforced by requirement of installation of automatic drips, so you don't get those dead trees.
Okay, I'm sorry that I wanted to have that question answered.
No, thank you, Planning Commission, for hearing this proposed project. I've had an opportunity to speak with some community members. I did get Mr. Passage, I hope I'm saying that correct, on the phone this afternoon. He's traveling through Utah. We talked about it. He really wants oleanders. That would be his preference. We talked about setback, and as long as we plant the right thing, he's okay with 100 feet. We can follow up with that later. His primary concern is just proper screening. And I'll share an image in a little bit of the existing system. I don't have any involvement or direct connection to that system. I'm actually not sure in what year it was installed. I will say that the screening there now is not adequate. And that's something we want to avoid. So walk you through a little bit about the solar project and our plans for vegetation. So the project overview, it's a solar project. It will look pretty similar in terms of the panels as the project that's there now if you've ever driven by. It provides renewable energy capacity to, in this case, SRP. I think it's important to know the context in which SRP is considering projects next to the Pinal Central substation. It's in the context of needing energy capacity, energy being solar or something else. So I think it's important to know that if they do not get solar for their procurement needs, they will probably have to do a natural gas facility. I don't know where that natural gas facility would be located, but I think it's worth noting that solar is, from SRP's perspective, the better option than putting in a natural gas facility, which are quite large and cumbersome. In terms of some sort of details on the system, one way to look at this, I've had some conversations with large landholders in the area, and they see this in their discussions with various folks as a way to conserve the area for future use. So I know for some residents it seems like it's not the best use, but in fact it's a way to kind of preserve it. And when I was on the phone with Mr. Passage earlier, he was excited that it could actually have the results of reducing crime impact in the area. That's his speculation. He would rather have solar than a manufactured home next door to his property. Solar isn't forever. It's 30 years or so. And chatting with folks about the transportation corridor going through, there definitely will be development. No one really thinks that development will occur in this region for at least another 15 to 20 years, if not more. So this, again, is a way to get some value out of the property for various landowners. There's a landowner who owns this land currently in the room, and it is a way to get some value out of that property that isn't a direct farming activity. The project components, that's a solar facility. It's pretty simple. Racking, which is the thing that the solar panels sit on, panels, and we are considering an energy storage facility at the location, which will set back at least 300 feet from any property line. That's not currently in the zoning ordinance, but we'd like to propose that as a way to make sure it's properly set back from any residential property. There's no known detrimental health or safety impacts from solar. This particular region has a lot of high voltage transmission lines and infrastructure. If you've ever driven out there, you have the Pinal Central substation, you have some agricultural use, you have the gin farm, which has sort of a production facility on it, you have an existing solar system, and then, you know, these transmission lines. So solar is very much in line with the existing use in the area. And then, you know, I think the city has done an excellent job laying out in the ordinance how to avoid a scenario. This is the current system across the street, and this is their vegetative screening. And so the city has set up a set of parameters. It's 1,300 trees and a lot of shrubs. It's a lot of vegetation, and we'll be responsible for putting that in there, picking drought-tolerant species, and we really want to work with the community to get their buy-off. So, you know, if Mr. Passage would like to see oleanders, we can definitely do oleanders. We're also open to doing solid block wall like you would see in kind of a residential neighborhood to screen the view. So we're open to all of the above to make this fit into the landscape. I personally like kind of the deserty landscape that you see driving from Phoenix down here. I think it's very compatible with the land use. But again, we would work through that in the planning phase, and we would address it with the community and get their final sign-off on what would be, you know, somewhat near their house. So these were some of the concerns. One thing that was brought up is heat island. There is an expert who's done some research on, you know, anytime you pave over anything, and we're not paving it, but we're putting solar panels, so you're creating more of a, you no longer have as much sort of natural environment. There is a little bit of heat impact in that specific area, just like in a supermarket, you know, parking lot, right? But that dissipates very quickly as you move outside of the area. And in our case, we're going to be putting trees and shrubbery around the exterior, which dissipates almost all of that heat right at the border of the property. So again, we're trying to be very, you know, do our best to fit into the neighborhood and the surroundings and provide a use that's compatible. This is also a glare analysis. These are various vantage points. There's no glare from the system. So this is actually a tool that we use to model that, looking at different times of day from 6 feet in height, and none of these vantage points would have glare impact. So that is the presentation that I prepared, rather short. I know there'll be a number of concerns and things from the community, and I'd be happy to respond to those. And we really want to be, you know, responsible developers and not do something that, you know, the others in the community, you know, drastically impacts their life. So that's my summary, and I will.
Thank you.
Away from the podium. Unless you have questions. No?
Questions? No? Any of the public like to come to the podium? Please.
My name's Justin Roberts, and I live at 11 Mile Corner. And what she just said, the glare off the other ones that are there reflects right into my house certain times of the year for a little while. So I oppose it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Tom Hollenbach. I live at 1744 South Private Drive in Tierra Grande. It's the first house as you come to Tierra Grande on 11 Mile Corner. Having lived there 44 years, we built our home and expanded our home to be a home that we hope to live in and have the surrounding owners, surrounding properties conducive to what we live in there today. I want you to know that I am opposed to this plan. I find the landscaping at the other place certainly under adequate conditions, poor at best. You're proposing some 3,800 bushes and 1,200 trees. Where's the water going to come from? I understand it's a drip irrigation system, and that's all fine and dandy. But somehow, somebody's got to water. The water's got to come from some source. My understanding is the water is an issue with the farmer, and that's why we're going the route we're going. And if that's the case, I'm not sure that we're resolving anything here by putting in solar panels that aren't going to be conducive to anything except Salt River Project making a lot of money and paying the city of Coolidge some tax money. If there are plans for battery storage on this thing, is the fire department from Coolidge going to be adequately trained and hazmat certified to take the brunt of a catastrophic accident should that occur? The city of Peoria found that out last month. They found out that they were ill prepared. Having talking to members of the fire department here in Coolidge, I don't believe that this fire department could handle a hazmat issue like that. They would have to call Cascade, possibly to Eloy. There in itself is an additional 20 to 30 minute response time. Having wherever the battery storage is, it could be catastrophic to residents in Rio Grande. I'm sure that the solar folks don't think that's going to devalue the property, but I've been a land surveyor for 35 years, and in this community, had my own company for 35 years, and I've represented many clients at many zoning cases. This will devalue the property. What's going to happen in 20 or 30 years? Certainly 30 years, I'm not going to be here to contest it, but 30 years from now, when solar is no longer accepted, if you will, what's going to happen to these solar panels? Are they going to come in and just remove them? What's going to happen to the land? The process by which the city is addressing this issue seems a bit backwards to me. I've discussed this with Mr. Lopez, and I'm not sure I fully understand, even though the petition for annexation has come forth, which quite frankly I was not even aware of, having never been notified, that you're asking for a special use permit on ground right now that is governed by the Board of Supervisors in Pinal County. Their general plan calls for this to be what's the term I want to use? Low density residential. I could support this project if it were somewhere else. I've never proposed to come before a commission and say I'm a NIMBY, because I'm not. I am not against progress by any means. I'm very progressive, I believe. But my neighbors that I talked to this weekend, not one of them received any kind of notice about this meeting tonight. My feeling is if this gets approved, then they'll go forward with the annexation, and at that point in time, we'll be here trying to oppose the annexation and look like we're opposed to progress. The gentleman just wrote the letter and said something about manufactured homes and stuff like that. That's all can be taken care of in zoning. Residential is the future of Pinal County. Not allowing ourselves to become a doormat for a major utility company to continue to run transmission lines, solar farms, and produce power that does not do anything for Pinal County. All it does is go somewhere else, usually to the East Valley. In this particular case, some will probably end up going to New Mexico or California. We are vehemently opposed to this, and it will leave us nothing but an eyesore of coming to our property and an eyesore in 20 or 30 years when solar is no longer applicable. Thank you for your, yes, sir.
I have a question. If the fencing was changed to all block fencing, 8 feet tall, all around the property, and no trees or bushes, just 8-foot fencing, would that be more acceptable to the residents of the property?
I can't speak for them.
Or for you then? You're,
For me, probably not. I'm sorry, but I ran for county supervisor a number of years ago when the transmission lines were first proposed coming through. And I went to the ACC as an owner, landowner, not as a supervisor candidate, and voiced my opinion at the ACC. Salt River Project did not even want to discuss the possibility of going around our fairgrounds with a power line. So instead, they bisected the fairgrounds, and they really didn't care what we wanted or what we thought. This is all great to speculate and say, oh yeah, let's set back 400, 500 feet before you do any building or anything like that. It's still an eyesore. And Mr. Boland, quite frankly, you're in real estate. Could you take a person out down 11 Mile Corner Road to a Tierra Grande for a sale and have to drive through this maze of solar shields and explain to your prospective client, yeah, well, this is not going to hurt your value of your property?
I would say probably not.
I would agree with that. I would answer any other question, unless, did that suffice?
That was the question I had for you right now.
Thanks, sir.
I may have more.
Not a problem.
Not at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. My name is Ken Raycraft. I represent the land ownership group that owns 80 acres right here. I've been selling land in Pinal County for over 20 years, and I see this area as an area there's no infrastructure in place, water, sewer. There is water, but no sewer in place. So I think we're not any development that happens that will come from the west off of I-10, closer to Casa Grande, around the mall area. And in 20 to 30, 40 years in this area, I think if they move the solar panels and put a residential house or subdivision here, I think it would certainly backfill the area nicely. But I don't see anything happening down here for a long period of time. You see the number of finished lots in town here that are, we just listed some in town that are below replacement cost. So there's zero value to the land. And as a landowner, our land is hardly worth anything today, unfortunately. We bought it many years ago, almost 20 years ago. But solar seems to be a way of the future for a lot of folks that want to go green, that are driving Priuses, etc. Power is inevitable. We have to generate power to live in Arizona. And with the water issue, I think by taking this ground out of production for the time being, I think that's probably a good thing, because you're not having to flood irrigate 1,400 acres of ground that requires 4 acre-feet of water per year. So I think that's a benefit for the farming community and the water predicament that Pinal County is facing today, which it's a real issue, as we all know. So we're in support of this project. I think the screening that Audrey's laying out, whether it's a fence or oleanders, I think is a good thing. The project that the county approved, I agree, it looks horrible. And I think that she's trying to alleviate any of those concerns by what is being put forth. Back to the landscaping portion, I think that the 1,200 trees and bushes that would go up would be considerably less than this being in cotton or alfalfa. So we certainly support her project, and hopefully you folks will see it that way.
Sir, is this acreage currently farmed?
I'm sorry?
This acreage is currently farmed?
It's ag, but it lies within San Carlos, and the last several years there's been no water in San Carlos, so there's very little allotment. The farmers will take that water and put it all on one property, typically, is what you see in the San Carlos district today. But it has been fallow for probably 4 or 5 years now. We have a lease in place, but they've got to keep it clean, basically.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
My name is Tommy Kaywood, and I want to introduce my wife, Sammy Kaywood, and my daughter, Patty. And I'll try to make this about as brief as I can, especially since I'll be 97 years old next month, and lucky to be here. But
I'm sorry, sir.
what
Where
I
do
wanted
you
to
live? I'm sorry.
point out is
Our farm, hang on just a second, hard of hearing.
what?
Our farm is on the southeast corner of 287 and 11 Mile Corner Road.
Okay.
Right. The land that we're talking about tonight, we have no objections to that solar plant at all. In fact, we're surrounded by some of them right now. But what our concern is the buffer zone. And according to one of the notes I got from them, we're talking about a 150-foot buffer zone. Well, that's hardly big enough to do anything as far as if they want to develop anything. So my suggestion would be that they increase the size of that, which would be better for us also. And I came up with some figures there. If they made it 200 feet, well, first of all, at 150, it'd take in a little over 18 acres. And then at 200 feet by a mile, it would increase it to 24 acres. And if it were 250 feet wide by a mile, it'd be 30.3 acres. And if it were 300 feet, like this letter says, it would be more ideal. There, it would take in 36 acres, but it would be a lot better for us and actually for them too, because it would be wide enough for development in the future, maybe like a Circle K or something like that. And so, like I say, we don't have any objections to that solar plant. We're already surrounded by them, and we have some land owned by the gen that we're looking at for solar plant too. And so I guess that's about all I have to say today, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tom Bagnall. I live at 67 North Sunshine Boulevard, which translates to the northeast corner of Sunshine into Highway 287. I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and my wife, as well as my mother-in-law, Jane Mackley, who lives at 1718 East Highway 287, which is just adjacent to our property. All I can say is here we go again. You know, I spent almost a year and a half, 2 years, fighting NextEra. But they went ahead and they pushed through. They didn't listen to what I had to say. The minute they found out I was against it, they cut off all communication with me. And the more I complained, the closer the panels got to my house. So if that's not spite, I don't know what is. I understand the situation, and I have no problem with what they're trying to do, other than the fact that it's going to now have me on two sides, on both my southern boundary and on my western boundary of my property. I'm going to be covered by these things, and I'm not happy about it. I wasn't happy about the NextEra thing. And as you've heard, the landscaping out there at NextEra is horrendous at Pinal Central Energy Center. And the only saving grace to the annexation, when we had the hearing here, and I brought it up, the very next day there were tractors out there and they were cleaning it up. They still have dead trees all up and down there, but at least they cleaned up the weeds. But there's still weeds in between all those solar panels out there. So again, I understand where the property owners are coming from, because yeah, the ground's sitting there, you can't use it, well, you might as well sell it. And I understand that. And I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with what's being proposed and being shut out in the process. As long as I'm not shut out in the process and I'm actually listened to and it's understood and these things are taken into consideration properly, I don't have a problem with it going in over there. Again, I just assume not have it because as you've already heard, there is probably going to be a loss in value to my property. Mine more than others because this is my residence. This is my mother-in-law's residence. And we're going to be covered on our south side and again on our west side. And the thing is, I've spoke with Ms. Copeland, and you know, they're just out here to put up the solar plant. That's all they care about. They want to put up their solar plant, and they'll do whatever they can in order to get it set up. But we really need to take a look at this because next year, when they were approved, that just opened the floodgates for everybody. If they don't do it, if they don't put this thing in, somebody else is going to come on in and do it. So, you know, I don't know, you know, you're in a catch-22 situation here. So, like I said, I know this is going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it, folks. Not a damn thing we can do about it. Because if SRP wants this, SRP is going to get it. Just like they did with NextEra. So, please, I'm asking the city of Coolidge, Mr. Lopez, Mr. Hanson, if you go ahead and you move forward with this, that's fine. I understand that. But I want to be at the table. I don't want to be shut out again. And I want to be listened to and not just look at me and go, oh, yeah, whatever, and then move on, like the good folks at Pinal County did. We can thank our current Board of Supervisors as well as the County Manager, Greg Stanley, and Himanshu Patel, Development Services Director, for the mess that we have across the road, and it's going unchecked. They don't care. It's up. The county's getting the tax revenue. They're happy. They maybe added a few more people onto their payroll. We're not happy. The area residents aren't happy. So please, if you go ahead and you move forward with this, fine, but don't cut me out of the process. Thank you.
Tom, I got questions.
Yes.
Stay there, please. Okay, on the property that will be to your west, currently there's a 55-foot right-of-way setback. I don't know where they're going to put the trees and shrubs. I assume, Ms. Copeland, are the trees and shrubs going in that right-of-way?
No, so we're going to have a setback, and the setback needs to be kept clean of everything, usually a right-of-way dedication.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're not supposed to be, I shouldn't be asking you to speak when you're not near the mic. Just go ahead, let me finish with Tom. Again, all right, so we've got 55 feet, and then we're going to have trees and bushes at some distance, and then we're going to put a fence up. If that fence was block again, would that make a difference to you as a property owner that you couldn't see those solar panels all the time?
It helps.
I mean, if the one across the street had a fence put up, and I think the city or somebody required it to be 100 feet off the road or something, if that had been a block fence put up there, you wouldn't be able to see. You may not have pretty trees, but you'd have a block wall, which is kind of like going down a freeway in Phoenix.
Right.
You got a block wall. You don't get to see the houses. You can't see through it, but it's a block wall. Would that be better than looking at the solar farm?
I feel it would be, yes.
Okay, that's what
Okay, but one of the other things, when we're talking about setbacks, are we talking about if they're going to are they going to put a 55-foot right-of-way in there, require a 55-foot right-of-way for the roadway?
Yep.
And is the setback from the roadway right-of-way, or is it going from the section line?
No, it'd be from the setback right away.
Wait a minute.
No,
like
from the street right-of-way.
If I may, Vice Chair, the right-of-way that exists there now is an easement form, 33 feet, so their property line is the center line of the road. We are going to require 55 feet of fee simple right-of-way, meaning we will physically own the property.
Correct.
Their property line will shift 55 feet over, at which point they will have a minimum 50-foot setback from there. So without any concessions, the code would require them at a bare minimum. First panel will be 105 feet off the center line of the existing road without any setback concessions.
And how about on 287?
287 is a 75-foot right-of-way dedication with 50 feet added to that, so 125 feet off the center line of the road could be the first panel potentially.
Okay.
What
All right.
about-
I realize that this isn't something that you can decide tonight or anything, and this is part of the planning process. And again, that's why I'm saying, if you're going to move forward with this, I want a seat at the table, because I would like to see those set back quite a ways. I think, as Mr. Kaywood mentioned here, you set it back far enough, that might leave that open for some commercial development. When we were going through this process with Pinal County, that exact thing came up, because NextEra did not communicate with the city, and Coolidge City Manager Rick Miller did come to the meeting, because they wouldn't even provide him with landscape plans or anything that he had repeatedly requested. And that was one of the things that he had came back with and said, okay, well, why don't you guys go ahead and you set this back far enough, and that way that still leaves that for commercial development. And the county just said, nope, they've already got their plans done. So this was before it was even approved. They already had everything finished and all ready to go. And I don't want to end up in that same situation.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Penny Bagnall. I live at 67 North Sunshine, right across from this. So, one thing that we're not discussing, environmental. You know, they can stand here and they can tell us, till the sun don't shine, that this does not affect our environment. Provide us proof. Give us studies, real studies, not something that they've paid somebody to do. Let's get some real studies in on this. How is this going to affect my health? Here's another situation that nobody ever thinks of. Our cell phone service. Since that went in across the road, our cell phone system is so minimal, it's unbelievable. The landlines that we have are so old, we can't have them. So in an emergency situation, how am I supposed to call 911? You're going to put in more that close to my house to where my 81-year-old mother, I can't call and get her help? That's a problem to me. This is environmental. There are so many other things to look at here. Get it away from me, and I'll be fine. Protect me, and I'll be fine. But don't tell me that the most important thing is freaking landscape. It's not. This is our lives. 47 years I've been on that property. I want to stay more. But I'm not going to be the best neighbor, and I am going to come out guns a-blazing from the environmental standpoint with Miss Copeland. I am going to push, and I am going to push, and I'm going to get answered. Because I want to just live. That's all I want to do. Get it away from me, but please, what I ask of you folks, protect us. We're your community. He's been here his entire life. I've been here since I was 3. We both went to high school here. We both moved away. We both chose to come back and raise our families and be a part of this community. Please just protect us. That's all in the world I want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get up there. I made a long list. I know glare. So I'm happy to share the glare analysis with you. I'm not surprised that there is glare from the current system because the fence, I don't know what kind of fence it is, but it's you can just see right through it. I think it might have been a slatted fence that lost the slatting. It was okay, but there's no vegetative screening, so the vantage point changes with all of that. And I'd be happy to share. This is not data that we fabricate. It comes from a third party. We're happy to get you that data. We're happy to put up a solid wall that would definitively mitigate any glare for your property. We can discuss the options. I'm open. I want, if it's near your property, I want it to be something that you can live with. I live in a residential area. Most residential areas contain block walls, at least where I'm at, and so we're happy to look at what would be okay. But I did want to address that the glare is not something we fabricated. It's based on a whole bunch of inputs into how we're designing the system. And I would not be surprised if the existing system is causing some minor glare impacts at certain times of the day. One of the other things that came up was decommissioning. So as part of our agreements with SRP, and I am less confident whether it's in the city's zoning ordinance, but we have to have a decommissioning plan for the system. We cannot leave the system there. Even if we weren't required with SRP, we have various parties that require us to decommission the system. That's typically a 6-month period of time where we strip all the solar panels from the site, and the site is left completely bare and somewhat restored to its original state. Solar is a bit more forgiving than other kinds of things you could put on property in terms of restoring it to the original state. We're not actually putting any permanent structure or large foundations under the site. Safety and training, I think it's a valid point. There was this recent APS lithium-ion fire, and I don't want to take away from that being a true fact. They're still investigating it. There's thoughts that a transformer blew at the substation, which could also happen here, unrelated to our system, unconnected to our system, but in the case of the existing APS battery, it is within the substation footprint, so you have a lot of other infrastructure, and I mean like the Pinal Central substation that currently exists there. So we're going to do everything we can to protect the community. We're not even sure there's a battery as part of this system, and we'll definitely house it somewhere in the center of this that's accessible but also far away from many residential structures. The irrigation, so the tree plan and the landscaping plan, our goal is to use as drought-tolerant species as possible. That's what the city zoning ordinance specifies. We're still figuring out exactly how we would irrigate it. One thought is actually doing a water tank, so we're still figuring that out, but our goal is to do landscaping that is as self-sufficient as possible. There is landscape out here that does grow naturally as you drive down the freeway, and so we want to recreate something that is more natural than not, so that we're creating a situation that can create that concealment from view for the neighborhood. The value for existing landowners, there's a lot of current use in this area. You have a lot of high voltage transmission lines, which people tend not to want to live near. We're happy to consider additional setbacks. I think Mr. Kaywood has a high voltage transmission line running straight through his property, and so we'd like to do whatever we can there to address setbacks and things like that. But ultimately, this area has a lot of congestion. If you drive down to Pinal Central substation, you'll see that there's probably at least 8 different large transmission lines going north, south, east, and west, owned by APS, Tucson Electric, WAPA, and SRP. So it's a very congested area. And then I think, the final reminder here is that whether it's solar or something else, there is a need for capacity at this substation outside of anything our firm does or doesn't do. And so if they're not able to accomplish the goal with solar of the generation that they need, then they'll go to some other source of generation. And the likely candidate for that would be a natural gas plant. I don't know if they could site it here. Probably not. But that would certainly be somewhere in this vicinity within Pinal County. I think I addressed most of the concerns that came up. I think there was another one around safety and training. We'd like to definitely work with the city. Normally we have a whole safety guideline. We monitor these systems in real time. We would set in place a safety program to be able to address this and make sure that there's adequate resources and folks that are trained in the event of something that might happen. And I guess the last point, there are a lot of solar installations throughout the country, all over, and I have actually yet to hear of one catching fire. It is a very, very rare occurrence. So just wanted to remind folks that electrical substations and things like that, things can happen, but they're extremely rare. So that's all I've got. I don't know if the Planning Commission has any questions for me.
I do.
Okay.
What I'm reading on the conditional use permit is everything I see here talks about the setbacks for right-of-way purposes, but I don't see anything noted here about setbacks from the right-of-way to that. You mentioned 50 feet more on some of it and 75 on others. Is that different than the right-of-ways that you're mentioning here?
Commissioner Boland, the right-of-ways we're speaking of is land that will be dedicated to the city specifically for roadway.
Okay.
The edge of that dedicated right-of-way becomes the new property line from which the setbacks are measured. Minimum setback for any conditionally permitted uses within the agriculture zoning district are 50 feet.
Okay.
They have negotiated some additional setbacks beyond 50 with some of the property owners, and we will add them to the conditional use permit if it moves forward.
Mr. Roberts, who was here, oh, there you are. I'm sorry, Justin. He lives on a corner lot, and he's going to have this property on two sides of him. Is he going to have 50 feet of setback from his property line to that, or greater than 50 feet?
Minimum of 50 feet or whatever is negotiated through that.
Negotiated by who?
The city, Mr. Roberts, Ms. Copeland. This is not, if this gets approved, this is not the last meeting. Tonight's hearing is allowing the use.
And it's setting the setbacks for easement purposes. And you're saying the regular city code will set the 50-foot minimum setback for building purposes. Is that correct?
The zoning code sets minimum setbacks anyway. These right-of-ways are codified on this exhibit, so both the applicant and the city knows the expectation for some minimum development standards going forward. The right-of-way widths we're seeking are not random numbers. They're based on our transportation plan, which has minimum right-of-way widths for minor arterials, principal arterials, parkways,
I'm just
and so
looking
on.
at the property that exists for Mr. Roberts, where he's going to have the closest, potentially the closest to his actual home would be 50 feet. In the case of Mr. Bagnell and his wife, they are going to be, is it 75 feet along Sunshine Boulevard setback?
55 feet of right-of-way on the west side plus a 50-foot setback.
So he's 105 feet.
That's to the center line of the road, plus whatever it is from there to his house.
Right, but
Mr. Roberts does have the potential to have these closer to his house than anybody else. The applicant has expressed a willingness to work with property owners. They have followed through on this so far with us. They've been pretty forthcoming with the city.
Another question for you. Go ahead.
That's it.
Mrs. Bagnell was talking about studies done by you or by anybody. She'd prefer by somebody else, obviously. Is there any difference between having a brick structured wall? Does it have any effect on holding the heat generated and whatever else is generated by a solar farm within the limits of the farm? If that wall is 6, 8 feet, and I assume it could be up to 8 feet tall, Mr. Hanson? Would it have to get a special permit to be 8 feet tall?
6 feet is the max allowed for a block wall in this zoning district. They are allowed 6 plus 1, 6 feet of chain link and 1 foot of barbed wire around any high voltage
Okay.
areas of the site, which they may or may not have, but the perimeter fencing is restricted to 6 feet, whether it be chain link or block wall.
Can they get a variance to make that look taller if it's requested? And just real quick
Theoretically,
before you
it's
answer that,
possible.
how high is a solar panel off the ground when it's vertical, straight up and down? How high is that?
Yeah, it was in one of the slides we breezed through. It's
Sorry.
it's just under 7 feet.
So a 6-foot fence means they're still going to see that solar panel
No,
every day?
because by the time you set it back, your vantage point, right, you have a 6-foot fence, you're standing here, you'd have to be in a 3-story building to then see in. The reason that that's not working with the current system across the street is the fencing and vegetative screening is inadequate.
Right.
But we could go higher, certainly. If a resident, speaking with some residents, they don't want a block wall. Some do. Some just want vegetation. The heat island effect is mitigated most by vegetation. That's actually the best way to do it. But the block wall would also help. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I have another question for both of you. This 50-foot setback after we get to the easement, is that 50 feet from the property line to where they can put the first panel for the solar project, or is it 50 feet before they can put trees, bushes, a wall up?
50 feet to the first solar panel. Some of that landscaping could potentially be installed within the right-of-way.
In the right-of-way or that 50-foot setback? Which?
Either,
Oh, it could be in either one.
yes.
So they really could have, the wall could be at the side of the easement,
The
technically?
wall could be on the property line.
That's correct, okay. And so
The
plants
preference
could
would
then
be to
up-
have the wall behind the landscape screening.
Right, but potentially the wall could be on the property line, and then the plants could be in the easement, which means that the panel may be 50 feet from the edge of the easement and 105 feet from the center of the road, but in reality, that wall is going to be 50 feet closer, whether it's a fence or a wall or whatever it is. It could be 50 feet closer, and the plants could be outside that wall.
Yes.
So it could potentially be similar to what we now have with the dead trees and bushes because the watering system appears to be inadequate.
There is no watering system out there.
Okay. Okay.
But it will be water will be required to be installed as part of this
Are
site
there wells on
development.
this property?
On anywhere they're required to install landscaping, they will have to have an operable drip irrigation system installed too.
She's trying to answer.
I know, so go ahead.
So one of the solutions that we're looking at is water tanks. I've been chatting with some other folks about how we do the drip irrigation. I do agree it is a hurdle that needs to be overcome and soon. So that is something we have to do to have our permit. So we have to figure it out. The water tank idea is a decent idea. And to do a water tank and to irrigate around the exterior.
Where does the water come from that goes in the tank?
So we will.
I'm smarter than you guys think I am, okay? I know you've known me a long time, but
So there is a way to get water on the property. I don't know if, Rose, you want to speak to that at all, or?
On more than half the property, there's 5 ag irrigation wells. On more than half the
there are irrigation wells on the property currently?
There's 5 on more than half of it.
Okay, I didn't know that. I haven't driven the property.
There's not one irrigation well over there at Lemon Corner. That's San Carlos ground, and you cannot drill another well on top of San Carlos ground.
Mr. Bartlett, just a minute.
So we're still working on our irrigation plan. We just found out the requirement a week and a half ago. So we're still working through that. We are aware that we need to resolve it. We will find a way to do it. We bring in water on occasion to wash modules. I was talking with some other landowners who had to bring in water for specific purposes. Although there is a lot of vegetation, this is still not irrigated farmland throughout the entire property. It is a huge property. So I do believe there's going to be a way to figure this out. We want to pick vegetation that needs as little water as possible. That would be the smart choice. So that's what we're trying to do. In regards to setbacks and fencing and solid fencing, there might be a range of preferences, and so we're open to working with the landowner to figure out what that is. Some folks might want the fence further up on the line of the property. They might want a block wall or they might not. That seems to vary. The opinion about that is highly variable. So we're happy to, obviously there's the minimum standards. I've offered forward a 100-foot setback for any residential property. The location of that fence is negotiable. We can't use it for solar if we set it back, right? So whether it's right on the line of the solar installation or ahead, you know, that can be worked out on a case-by-case basis for the impacted properties.
I mean, any trees we plant, that you plant, that are planted, are going to be probably 5 to 15 gallon plants, which we're probably looking on a mesquite tree or a palo verde 10 to 15 years to become of a size of any value. And in nature, we give them, 50 years to get that size, and we don't care. But when you're planted around your house, you water it every day, and you pray, and you do everything you can to hope that tree stays alive. And it still takes 20 years to become a really decent-sized tree that's going to have any effect on blocking the view of this. The chain link fence, to me, does nothing. It just means it's easy to watch. If you like to look at solar panels for miles and miles, it's a great way to do that. If you really enjoy it, go down by Gila Bend, and they've got a nice thing for 2 miles. You can look at solar panels. Doesn't do a thing for me, but they're there. And the same way going over to Casa Grande now, you see the solar panels, and I don't see a chain link fence changing that in my lifetime. I've got another 30 years. Me and him are going to be about the same. At 95, we're going to give this up. And so I don't see those trees being a decent size.
Which is why we've proposed outside of the zoning ordinance a block wall if the resident would like that. There are residents that would not like that actually have stated just on the call that I think his name is Shotgun. On the call with him this afternoon, he stated a preference for the chain link fence and oleanders. That's what he wants. So that, I think, is on a case-by-case basis. I agree it takes a while to grow a tree, which is why I want to work with a landscape planner on exactly what we should do here to provide the maximum screening possible.
Yeah, I don't know who Mr. Shotgun is. I've only been in the town for about 50-some years, so.
Shotgun is the property owner I read the letter from.
Right, I understand that, but I mean, I don't know what he knows of the area, and most of the people sitting here that I've been talking to, I grew up with several of them.
3 years he's lived on that.
Okay, and his opinion is valuable, but I don't know that it's as valuable to me as it is the people that have been living here for long terms. And you've been in that farm for as long as I can remember.
Certainly, and that's why we would like to work with folks on the vegetation that works best and the screening for their property and their particular sort of ideas around aesthetics. It does not have to be consistent around the exterior here.
So if some person or group wanted a block fence in their particular area, where someone else would like to do chain link and something else, there could be a variety of fencing materials used?
That's right. I mean, the fewer the better, but if we really have a high degree of variability on aesthetics, we would certainly do that.
You're going to have at least a 6-foot fence just to protect your investment of some material.
We will have the minimum standard is the powder-coated chain link fence. That's what's been specified by the city. But we can do within that, where you have residents, there's a handful of them, we could do a block wall or we could do a vinyl wall. We could look at different options that meet their particular needs. And if they just want the chain link fence, that of course is an option.
I'm sorry, I skipped over something, or I didn't get the answer into my own head. We talked about the effects of the solar and whether it changes any by having a block wall to contain it and protect the people around it. Is there any study that says a block wall is beneficial to whatever is radiated from that?
So in terms of the heat, there's no specific study that discusses block walls. There are studies that discuss vegetation, and I'd be
Okay.
happy to share that.
What about other emissions that come from solar? Is there anything else that's emitted by a solar or
EMI?
or the energy produced?
So there's no there are no pollutants emitted by a solar farm. There are EMFs like there are in our phone, and as is the case with the transmission lines. However, the EMFs that come from this are substantially less than any of the transmission infrastructure in the area. Well, you've got a transmission line running through the one property, and also I'm happy to get data on that for you that gives you the distance for EMFs from a solar array. The point is simply that it's considerably less than it is from a high voltage transmission line, of which they're running through this area going north, south, east, and west.
But now you're closer to the ground.
In terms of the distance, I again would be happy to provide studies on the distance as it pertains to this kind of facility. It's not as concentrated. And in fact, when it's up in the air, it's actually worse in terms of how it radiates with the EMFs. So I'd be happy to provide some data on that. But we're close to the ground. We're not in the air, and we're set back from properties at a distance.
I'm just thinking, our power line within so many feet of that, there's studies out of the dangers, and that's why schools are no longer built around high transmission power lines, because they generate huge amounts in a aura all the way around them.
They do, and this area is just covered with high voltage transmission lines.
Well, yeah, but they're not. But yeah, they're not right on top of any of these farms, or within a reasonable distance. I doubt that any of them are affecting the people living there. But if this is generating something that is 105 feet from their home, that is generating an EMF aura around it, that's fairly close, because now they don't let you live within 300 feet of a power line. You can't build a structure, but you're going to tell us you're going to be able to build one. You're going to build these 105
So these are
feet.
not the same this does not produce the same strength EMFs as the high voltage transmission lines. I could provide data that shows you the rundown of all of that.
Individually, I'm sure they don't, but how about cumulatively?
Again, I can provide the data from the setback in terms of the distance and the EMF dissipation. I don't have the stat readily available, but I know it's a much further distance for high voltage transmission
I'm
line.
used to asking questions somebody else is.
No, these are good questions, and I'd be happy to provide the data for a utility scale solar project.
Kim, do you have anything?
Please step to the podium, sir.
My name is Frank Thorne, and my wife and I live in Tierra Grande, about a block up from Tom. And we've gone to all sorts of power meetings when they were putting in all of the high tension lines and everything. And it's real interesting how power companies manipulate people to get what they want, and governmental entities. And out and out lie in some cases, but most people are not smart enough or have the information they need to make a judgment on how it impacts them until it's too late. And that's what's happened to Tierra Grande with the high tension power lines. The question I have, and I haven't heard any answer to it, and I was going to ask you, is how high does the temperature in the area where this solar project's going in rise in that particular area? Because where we live, which is right over here, the prevailing wind out of here is always southwest.
From the southwest to the north, yep, okay.
Yeah. And sometimes when trucks come in the winter, it comes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right now, all of this land down here is designated for the same thing. So we're kind of surrounded, or will be. So when the lady that the Southern Power Company ran off, so they could build their solar system over there, when she was confronted with it, she was told that and that's a smaller one than this one, that the temperature would raise about 8 degrees. Well, if the prevailing wind's going that way, and it's 110 or 115, and it gets 8 degrees more, it's going to be a little hard to live in that area. It's going to raise the cost of generating our air conditioning to keep cool. And if you're outside playing golf, you probably won't be out there very long with that, especially if there's a wind blowing. I have a concern with 8 degrees increase in temperature and living around it and in it. And that's what's going to happen.
It'll be good in the winter for golf, though.
It might be.
It might,
That's
you know.
one time you build a mountain house.
Move the tee time up.
But that kind of temperature, you know, these are older homes, some of them. This is a trailer park. This is a kind of like an RV park. And then those are regular homes. And all of that heat, I wouldn't, if I had children, I wouldn't really want to raise them there. And I'm not sure that I would want to live there, continue to live there with this thing. I guess that's the problem I have is we're probably the first community that's being surrounded by this stuff. And they say, you know, well, we can tear it down and put something else there. Well, I guarantee you what they put there after this stuff goes isn't going to be any better. It may be even worse because this is trying to be an industrial corridor. And on top of that, then you're going to have the internet connection from the East Valley down to Picacho, the freeway. That's going to throw some more pollution in the air and make things nice and miserable. You know, property values are going to die. We won't even be able to sell it and get anything out of it to go buy another house somewhere else. The aesthetics of it, I wouldn't want it. I won't be able to see it from where I'm at, hopefully. But I do know that those panels reflect, because I've driven down the road where that one is over by where that gentleman lives. At the time of year, when those panels are turning, it'll blind you. That's from the road. So I guess the question I have for the city of Coolidge, the other issue I'm really concerned about is fire protection. There is no fire protection out there unless you contract with the outfit over at CAC. And by the time they get there, all you're going to have is a pile of ashes.
They don't have enough water.
Well, yeah, they'd have to bring a tank to do that. My property, I have water outlets all over the property because sometimes I burn weeds and stuff. And I used to be a part-time firefighter just to keep my place from burning down because a lot of people don't take care of their weeds. And that place over there in the north part is full of weeds. I mean, you could go out there right now and throw a match in there and the whole place would go up in one big flame. And by the time the fire department gets there, it's already burnt out. It's that bad. So, you know, this might be good for somebody somewhere else, but we're not getting any of this power at all. We don't get any of it from anywhere other than ED2. And we've got, running right down this probably solve the river project, I'm not sure, managed to get around the complaints we had about not wanting those towers sitting in our backyard. I'm only probably about 300 feet from the intersection. When I go out, sit on my patio, I'm looking at this tower that's towering over me, and they plan to add more lines to that to feed Tucson. So, you know, I understand this may be a moneymaker for you guys, but for us, it's a disaster. And for the fire aspect, I carry insurance, and they won't give me any credit at all, even though I contracted with these guys over at CAC. Because by the time they get there, it's a total loss. So I pay probably about $1,500 a year for house insurance, so that if it does burn down, I can get it rebuilt. But that's the kind of impact it has. This is not a big community, but it's been around a long time. I've lived here since 1964, and I've lived there 21 years, but I've lived in a lot of other places, including Coolidge. And you do have a good fire system, because when I used to contract you when I was working at the training program to provide fire protection for us. But we still had an on-campus fire brigade, because it still took me about 15 minutes to get there. You know, we had car fires and stuff like that. You can't make a phone call hardly at all from here anymore because of all these power lines and stuff. And some people, I can get out once in a while. They were going to put a tower in there. I don't know what happened to that. So it's hard to get help if you need it. And if you guys take on that, I'd be a little concerned about lawsuits. I don't know. It concerns me because I'm 71, and I don't particularly want to pick up and move, but I'm not going to live in a place that's 8 degrees hotter than it is now, and you can't go outside. And it just kind of takes away from where you live. And they may put it in there anyway, I don't know. But all of these things go in, and nobody talks to us. I didn't get a notice because I don't live close enough by a block, 300 feet, to even know this is going in. I just have to read the newspaper and see it. The reason there's no one else here besides us is because these people haven't been notified. These people haven't been notified, nor have these. There's probably over, I would say probably 1,000 people that live out there. And if they've gotten notice, I'm not aware of it. But I have noticed a lot of people seem to be moving out, selling their golf carts and things like that. And those are the older people from that sun site, I think. And so I don't know. I've had realtors talk to me about selling, and I'm not, from the problems I've had with the utility before and what they've told me, most of them just play games. They twist it around, and no problems, and then there it is. And you folks have, I guess, annexed that power plant. I don't know what happened to the one, there was supposed to be another one bringing in a line from New Mexico that was going to be wind power. And then the signs disappeared, but they were going to go right through here. And this other power plants you have over there that I guess the Canadians own and they're trying to sell, they were going to run another line down here. We weren't happy about that either.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see what happens.
I won't be long. We have the farm on the southeast corner of 11 Mile Corner and 287. And when NextEra came in, they promised us the moon. I mean, everything was going to be so aesthetic, and they were going to put up a block wall, and they were going to keep the weeds down and everything. And Tom saw through it. I mean, he absolutely saw through it. And then all of a sudden they couldn't put the block wall up because it wasn't conducive to their operation, and it would keep the heat too contained. It would damage the solar panels. And so they were going to put privacy slats in the chain link fence, which we all opposed. I don't even think the privacy slats ever went in. And so I think, you know, if you're going to approve and do this, that Tom and Penny need to be able to sit at that table. And because they're the ones that are most directly effective, and Justin. And so I just, you know, we would like to have, you know, the setback that that my dad wants, you know, the 300 feet. But the people that are just really affected are them. Do you guys have noise? Yeah, Travis was talking about the noise. Yeah, there's a constant hum from those solar panels. And, you know, and so I don't know if a block wall would buffer that. I can't see them paying the money to build a block wall that big. But anyway, those are just, you know, points that I wanted to make, and I really think that Tom and Penny should sit at that table along with Justin.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, you guys. My name is Rose Robertson, and I'm the daughter of the landowner, whose most of the property belongs to, Pat Robertson. We obviously want the solar plant to come in. I would really love if they played fair with all of its neighbors. I want the city to be involved because that's important to me. I'm involved in Coolidge. I want you guys' opinion on it. When SRP came through, they said that they were going to go around the fairgrounds when they wanted to come through. And each time they turn that is 3 poles. It takes 3 poles to make a turn every time they turned it. And so they would have to turn it 4 times to go around the fairgrounds. I went to the Corporation Commission and I said I would prefer it go through the fairgrounds, because I would rather a single pole be out there than 60 poles. So, I mean, my farm's been there since the 20s. It's been in my family for eternity. I would love to farm it, but you know, farming is going by the wayside in Pinal County. We're struggling with water. We're struggling with water up by Kim Bartlett and Justin. But there are 5 wells on this big piece of property. I don't know about Ken's property, but there's 5 wells here, and that's all I can say to it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
There are no wells over there, and it's San Carlos property, or San Carlos ground. And if you're San Carlos landowner, you cannot drill a well on it. So you'd have to bring the water from outside of the San Carlos boundary line to put on there. And over there at 11 Mile Corner, there's a long stretch from where her wells are saying. How are you going to make it over there at 11 Mile Corner going through everybody else's easement? Okay, come on.
No, I want to be clear about that. No, this has water. This does not. Right. And however they get water there, that's up to, that's up to Corona. But the majority here has water. There are 5 ag wells on this property. That's what
I got that. Did you guys get that?
Yep, I got that. And Corona's worrying about it. I can see by the look on her face.
one more question for you.
Sure.
Sorry, I know everybody wants to quit.
Okay.
This temperature thing they're talking about, does it generate X number of degrees, and is there something you know as how much degrees heat will be generated by a plant like that?
8 degrees is not a figure that I have heard used. I've heard 3 to 4 within the array location. But I also want to be really careful with facts, whether we're talking EMFs, temperature, fire, all of that. I do not have all of the data with me today to respond to those respectfully. And so I just don't want to say something one way or another that isn't correct. But responsibly, I would like to come up with those answers and provide them and do so in a way that the community is happy with. There are experts on the heat island effect that have a lot of information, especially as it pertains to vegetative screening. That's one of the best ways to keep that heat island effect from occurring. And it also isn't quite the same impact that you get from certain kinds of ways solar is installed. I think it's worth noting. If you completely grade and level the site and remove all of the turf and then put the solar, that has a different kind of heat island impact than leaving the terrain somewhat natural within the array area. And what we typically do is we try to minimize impact to the site area. And so if the area is fairly flat, we don't necessarily need to clear and grade and grub all of the area to install the system. So, but I've heard a number of things, and I want to respond with actual facts and information. I think it is worth noting, though, that this area in general has a lot of infrastructure already there. And we're going to take the steps to screen it. And, you know, I know that you've had a negative experience with NextEra. I did fly in and meet with Tom last Friday, made a special trip, and under a week heard his concerns. I'm trying to address them. So, you know, I can't speak to exactly what happened with NextEra. I did find the news stories online a while back. It seems like it was getting permitted through the county. I don't even know who the permitting authority for it was in the end. I suspect they were fairly far down the path of their plans. That doesn't give them a good defense. We're right at the beginning, though. We're trying to incorporate the community. I've received a flood of calls just in the last couple of days, and I'm trying to respond to those, and I want to incorporate all of that in the final site plan. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public like to speak?
I really didn't. My name is Brooks Bartlett. Thank you for letting me address the council. I appreciate that. I really didn't intend to speak, but it's interesting. Kind of the biggest discussion here is about the wall, whatever. You can't see it over a 3-story building. That might be a bit questionable. And that was a cute picture about the saguaros on the landscaping. We'll take care of that with a tank. Good idea. And the other guy, the progress is moving west. It started that, and then somehow that Phoenix Mart, how'd that work out? I've been to these meetings before. I always get run over, but at least I have the opportunity to say something, and I'm doing it. So, and it just makes no sense. The data they have, what's the life expectancy of a solar panel? 10 years, it diminishes from day one. So in 10 years, Coolidge, in their infinite wisdom or not, will possess that piece of real estate, which 11 Mile Corner is kind of a hub for things that, you know, that interstate's probably coming through. You're going to stick posts up here at what, 8, 12, 14-foot wall? You're driving down the road in a vehicle. The wall's not tall enough to make any difference on the aesthetics of that deal. And once again, like Mr. Hollenbach and Bagnall so eloquently addressed, the values will not do that. And the cell phone service, as soon as that went in, it's over. I can't talk on my cell phone at the house. So, I mean, I don't have a Google thingy to make my speech with here, but I appreciate the time for saying that, but you got to think about it. Those cactus in that picture and a water tank, and once again, it's not to get this, it's the long-term thing. When you drive down the road, and it's funny, I can't remember which one of you members of the council said, oh, is there a solar plant out there already? Yes, there is and has been. And it's a couple years old, so it's already diminishing in its effort. And once again, if you didn't know it there, you ought to see it because it looks like it does. So if you want more of the same, go for it. And once again, where's the money coming from? Out of town money. Where's the money going? Out of town. And you guys will be left with whatever you decide on. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brooke. Anybody else? All right, we'll close the public hearing at this time. Members of the council? Tim, I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
I heard you say that this was not annexed as of yet.
That is correct. There is an annexation filed for the northern piece without the cross black lines and the entire southern piece. The annexations are filed with the recorder.
It seems like we put the cart before the horse.
We have done this before. Not the most common, but it does happen. If the CUP were approved, it has no validity if the annexation fails. We have no jurisdiction over county lands.
Correct, but if the CUP is approved, then they blaze through without coming back to answer.
That is not correct, Vice Chair Halby. Tonight, all you're doing is approving the use. If it were to be approved and they were to successfully be awarded contracts by SRP or whoever, then they would have to do a major site plan, which comes back to the commission for review, another public hearing, all the same notices go out to the same people, and that gets more into the specifics of how the site will develop, what the circulation looks like on site, if there is battery storage, where that will be located.
That's when we get into the trees and the shrubs and the fencing.
The specifics
and all
of where everything
Not here
goes.
and now. Here and now is about whether we're going to approve the use and whether the use is conducive to our people, the people that are in our neighborhoods.
That is correct. But this is not the end-all, be-all.
They can't use their cell phones. That bothers me.
So it's admitting something that's blocking.
I'm sorry. So I just want to be clear, I have actually never heard of solar panels impacting cell phone use. I'm not negating that that is the case, but I just want to be clear, I've never heard of that, and I've heard of all kinds of stuff related to solar. I'd love to research that and come to the table with some actual data on whether that is true or not. There could be other explanations.
I think that we have two subject matter experts sitting there because they live next to it.
Sure, I understand that, but there's also a lot of other things in the area, including huge transmission lines that also have impact on.
Okay, all right, okay.
I understand that. I'm just saying I'd like to actually understand why that happened. I don't know why it would happen. I've never heard that with any solar installation we've done anywhere. I'm not saying it isn't true. I don't know why it's happening. So I just want to be careful about jumping to the conclusion that it is the solar. It could be something else that was installed with the solar. I don't know, but I've never heard of that before. So I just wanted to note that.
Mr. Hanson, and Director, so based on it, if we approve this tonight, that they are allowed to put a solar on this property that is being sold to them, I assume that you're buying this property and you have not yet purchased it, so it's being sold based on the ability to use the property for your needs. We can still go back before they start construction and when they provide this major site plan and talk about fences, trees, setbacks. The only setbacks we're really talking about currently on this property are easements. You're increasing the size of the easements all around the properties for future use of traffic and needs of those roads. Is that correct?
Yes.
So at whatever time when they come back, we can sit down and say, okay, we want a setback of this, this, and this for these particular areas, and we want trees, bushes, fencing of this, this, and this for these particular areas. Is that true?
You would get into the specifics with the major site plan, and that's required before they can pull any permits.
Okay. I'm not against them having the solar because I'm in agreement that the land is going to be used. It is a use for the land. It is what the property owners would like to sell it. At the same time, the people around it need to be protected. Whatever that setback is, if it's 300 feet like this gentleman said, or 100 feet or 200 feet or whatever around these homes that are going to be dramatically affected, and like this gentleman over here said, wind blowing off that at whatever temperature is going to raise the temperature in that area. And I don't know if he's lived at 124, but I've seen that and it's not fun.
Okay.
So, okay. As long as we have another say about the details that are going to go around this thing, great.
Yeah, this isn't for details. This is just use.
I also would like to hear the answers to the questions, like what's causing the cell phone problem? What's, there's things about it that will change if we hear the right answers. If we don't hear the right answers, there's going to be some real problems. You know that already going in. So
I know Verizon has had their service has dropped in the general area around here. Okay.
they're all the same.
I'm not putting it on one carrier. I'm saying Verizon
Yeah.
in town here, their service has taken a nosedive. I don't know why. I'm not saying solar panels don't cause it. I don't know if they do or don't.
I don't either.
I was just curious. Verizon has taken a dip in their local service.
Yeah, it's
which
been
is why they're putting more towers in town.
Yeah, Commissioners, that's been a discussion with Verizon from the city's standpoint because we use Verizon. We don't know about the others, but they're switching to 5G, and which goes shorter distances, but we don't know if that's causing it. So they're adding more towers, but we don't know if that's going to fix it within the city. I don't know what's going on out here. So if that's in the city properly, even Heartland, you can't get signals in certain parts of the city of Heartland. There's towers right next to it. So
I've been working the subdivisions of Casa Grande for the last week selling houses, and it's all over that area too.
yeah. So we don't know if it's the
subdivision.
Yeah. So anyway.
But don't think that's related to what they're having. I think that's what they're related to is directly related to these farms. Are we ready to make a motion on this?
I believe we are. Can I get a motion?
I motion to approve Cool PZ 190406 and Resolution 1902 as presented with the amendments discussed.
Can I get a second? We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion passed.
Who said nay?
I said nay. All right. Next on the agenda, Cool PZ 1904-03, a proposed amendment to the zoning to add data center alphabetically to the list of definitions to include data center as a principally permitted use in the agricultural, commerce park, and garden industrial zoning districts. Section 302 of the zoning code is amended by adding the following definitions alphabetically to the list of definitions. Data center, a building dedicated space within a building or a group of buildings used to house computing facilities such as servers, routers, switches, and firewalls, as well as supporting components like backup equipment, fire suppression facilities, and air conditioning. Section 501B is amended by adding data center in alphanumeric order to the list of principally permitted uses in the agricultural zone to read as follows. Excuse me. B, principally permitted uses. Number 2, data center. Section 605C is amended by adding data center in alphanumeric order to the list of principally permitted uses in Commerce Park to read as follows. Section C, principally permitted uses. Number 25, data center. Section 701C is amended by adding data center in alphanumeric order to the list of principally permitted uses in garden industrial I-1 to read as follows. Principally permitted uses. Number 13, data center. Mr. Lopez.
Commissioners, yeah, it's something, and I've got to give kudos to Tim. He did a lot of research on this. We've noticed and we've seen, as you know, with all the property we've annexed in, we were talking to an internet backbone provider named Zayo that came to town, and they're running some really high capacity fiber through the city in the right of ways, and maybe down Selma and some other areas, and these are big backbones for data. In fact, I guess some of the, like Verizon and all these other companies use them to transmit data. They call it dark fiber. That means they have it for lease. It's like a big pipeline, and you can lease part of it to run your data. So one of the things they support and they have throughout the communities in the United States are data centers. Data centers are used to support the cloud, basically. But they bring a lot of revenue to cities, and they're quiet, and they don't make any noise. The only downside, they don't have a lot of employees, but they employ some. But they're revenue generators. They're used to support other businesses. You see them in the West Valley. There's a lot of them. But I've heard good things about them. They don't make noise. They don't pollute. Nice buildings, But and Tim, you did a lot of research on this. So is there anything else you want to add to that?
Looks good.
Yeah. So anyway, we'd like to add it is in kind of the same way in agriculture and industrial. So those two areas we see it where we could use it and be able to respond quickly, like say on some of the Pinal Land Holdings property. And you won't see these data centers, I don't think, very close to the rail, because rails are not, they shake.
They don't need
vibrate.
rails.
So you don't want to put them next to that. So you won't see them next to that.
Vibratory.
Yeah. So, but it's something we're trying to be proactive, and we're hoping to attract some here into the city. As we're moving into a high-tech type city with Nikola and all the other things, we see more advances in IT coming forward. So this is one of those moves. We'll answer any questions you may have.
If I could add, we specifically selected these zones because of the character of a data center. Commerce Park, the definition for that zone, this use is conducive within that. Also within the I-1. Now, adding it to the I-1 by default will allow it in I-2 also, because I-2 permits all the I-1 uses. And agriculture thrown in there because this is not really an invasive use. It's not contentious, maybe like our previous agenda item. But they do require large tracts of land. The ones I've looked at throughout the U.S. where I didn't find a site smaller than 50 acres, and some of them were 150.
Wow. And they use a lot of power.
So they need big land. A lot of times they will have some water-type facility for cooling purposes on type, depending on how facility. There's a lot of different types of facilities at different levels. But in analyzing the various zoning districts in our code, we felt these were appropriate places to put them.
Where's the next closest facility of that nature in Pinal County?
There isn't one in Pinal County. The only one in the state, really, if you are doing any internet traffic in the state of Arizona, it is running through a central hub in Phoenix. All of it.
So would this permit that use out at our airport?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes. Any industrial, agriculture, or we don't have any commerce park zoning right now, but as things develop in the future, that's like a business park.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to have a grocery store there, but you may have some professional offices, maybe some warehousing and things like that. So it would fit in line with the things that are allowed within there.
Awesome.
Yeah, Skip's working with that company, Zayo, to run internet fiber along with Skip, San Carlos Irrigation, and other areas. So that includes our airport. So we were very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
We need more, we need access to broadband out at the airport for businesses. You have to have it nowadays. And
Yeah.
so, I mean,
That's what's going to
that would
attract
open it up.
commerce to the airport area.
Right. So we were very happy to hear when we spoke to them that they're working on that. So.
Can we get a motion? Any other discussion?
This is a public hearing too.
Oh, no. So we have to open it up to the public.
Yes.
So we'll open it to the public. Anybody step to the podium? We'll close the public. Any discussion? No? Someone who want to make a motion?
Vice Chairman Helby, I motion to approve Cool PZ 190403 as presented and discussed.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, last agenda item. The amendment, Cool PZ 1904-07. An amendment limiting the number of garage sales to 4 per calendar year. Section 1904 of City of Coolidge zoning code is amended by adding the following restriction. In general, 4 garage sales limited to 60 consecutive hours and 4 events per calendar year. Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
I'd like to take this one if I can.
Go ahead.
And I'm not going to reread the staff report you've got here. Our code used to limit your yard sales to 4 per year. It was in there. I don't know when it came out. I don't think it was intentional. But we have ongoing issues throughout town. Not just one person. There's lots of them. And you see their front yards are covered with tables and knickknacks, and they tarp them during the week, and then they're at it again on the weekend. The way the code is right now, it allows for 60 consecutive hours, so 2.5 days, But you can pull that every weekend. So now you're running a home-based business. I mean, you guys have all been to yard sales. You see the traffic that comes through and stops or just slows down and see if they want to stop, which is fine. Everybody does yard sales. It's necessary. But if you're doing it every weekend, you are a nuisance to your neighbors, I assure you. And if you cannot accommodate your household purging with 4 yard sales a year, quit buying stuff. We have places, there's a swap meet right south of town that you can conduct this activity in. You may open a storefront and sell whatever knickknacks you want, but a retail for sale business every week in your front yard is not okay for a neighborhood. With that provision out of our code limiting 4 per year and only the 60 consecutive hours, our code enforcement has no mechanism to do anything. We can kind of run, well, you don't have a business license and your perpetuity is making it a business and all these arguments, but if you just put the 4 per year back in, that's 1 per quarter, 1 for every season.
Yeah, and I've used the administrative authority under the zoning code myself to stop. I think, Ken, you were involved in that one over in Heartland that was every day they were going in and cleaning out those those storage facilities, and they put all the stuff in the front yard, and they had traffic all day long in a cul-de-sac, and I was getting calls from everybody. And we used our administrative authority under the zoning code, but it's a stretch. You know, I mean, I used what I could and kind of got it done, but if they challenged it, I really didn't have a regulation backing me up. So it worked, but in order to do, as Tim says, and prevent abuse, then, you know, we're not going to go chasing everybody for, oh, you had two this week to raise, you know, stuff for the Boy Scouts. That, you know, we're looking for the abusive people that are running them all the time. So
Yeah, I live over in Heartland, and I think it's great for community involvement when they have that big garage sale and everybody gets out there, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I can totally see the abuse and where it's being abused, and you do need that vehicle. You have to have that mechanism to enforce.
We need to be able to give our people the tools to address this.
Yep, absolutely.
And so that's really the point of this. This was requested by staff in development services who deal with these issues.
Just putting it back in. We accidentally took it out.
I agree.
Okay.
Also a public hearing.
All right, so we'll open it to the public. Nobody stepped to the podium, so we'll close the public hearing. Can we get a motion?
I move that we approve Coolidge PZ 190407 as written.
I second it.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Reports.
Things are going very well. Thank you all for being here. Nicola's, you know, moving forward. We're waiting for civils. Stinger Bridge and Iron's expanding. They're adding 20,000 square feet. No, that's Bright International's. They're adding 20,000 square feet. Stinger's actually working on other things, but they're also expanding, and they've been doing that. So we've got quite a few. I've got a list, but anyway, we've got quite a few things. The new Dairy Queen's getting closer. They're going to start on the exterior, I think, next week. I talked to the gentleman that owns it today. So we're looking. The houses are getting built. Way Journey's building more in Picacho Crossing. So a lot of activity, and we're seeing more and more. So it's looking very good.
Senior Center, the senior housing?
Picacho Crossing, yeah. Yeah, senior housing, the plans were submitted. So they're in review right now. We still have a couple things they need to submit, but it's moving forward. So we finally have plans in we could look at, and we're under the review time right now. So that's definitely going forward. It's good. It's like close to 5 million, 35 units. Be nice for that area, 4th and Sproul. Be a big improvement. That's all I have, Mr. Vice Chair.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all you want to talk about.
Call to the public. All right. And adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.